Hey guys, my name is Lilly and today I want to talk about radioactivity and how you can protect your vegetables inside of your greenhouse against radioactive fallout. Stay tuned. So here I have a Geiger counter which I got a couple of years ago, and every now and then I test it with my radioactive watch, which I have found at a flea market in Austria, by the way. Back in the 1920s, some clock manufacturers have used radioactive radium to paint the watches, especially the figures and the clock hands on the watch. And this made the watch radioluminescent, but back then they didn't know anything about the dangers of radioactivity. So this watch is highly radioactive, and if I measure this watch here, I get about 14 microsieverts through the plastic sheet. And actually, if I take out the watch out of the plastic bag, then I would measure much more, because radium is mainly a alpha emitter, and alpha rays can be blocked off by a simple plastic bag. So I have measured this watch without the plastic bag, and then I got readings of over 50 microsieverts. And that's actually pretty hot. So that's very, very radioactive. Now, okay, so why do you want to protect your greenhouse against radioactive fallout? Well, maybe I should talk a little bit about Chernobyl. So when Chernobyl happened, the radioactive cloud came to Austria, unfortunately, because normally the wind comes from the west and goes to the east. And from here, Chernobyl is in this direction, about 1,500 kilometers away. And yeah, unfortunately at this time the wind was turning and it brought a lot of radioactive particles, fallout, so to say, over Austria in the clouds, and unfortunately then it rained down over my country, and a lot of radioactive particles, including cesium-137, got washed out over my country. And I have a map here where you can see how the radioactive particles have intoxicated my country. And yeah, it came down in some regions more than in others. So in some regions there were some hot spots, and some regions were not that intoxicated. Another thing that is worth mentioning is that back then, when the super-GAU happened, unfortunately they didn't tell us, like, hey, we have a problem, prepare yourself. They didn't do that. So actually they tried to not tell us, but in Austria, you know, the government also measures radioactivity, and then when the radioactivity was here, we got alerted, but that was only 3 days after the super-GAU happened. So the problem is that civilians will not get informed very fast. And back then also it took a long time until they knew where most of the radioactive fallout came down. So if you have a Geiger counter yourself, you can measure your own garden, and then you know how bad the situation is. So that's a couple of reasons why you want to have a Geiger counter. And yeah, it was pretty bad. My country got hit very bad, and back then I was only 1.5 years old, so I didn't know anything about radioactivity yet. And gladly my parents were so smart to not eat the vegetables from our garden anymore. Back then, unfortunately, we didn't have a greenhouse, and they only bought vegetables from greenhouses. So that's how they made it, and I think it was a good decision. The next topic is also very important. It deals with a general misconception that people have. Unfortunately, we don't learn about that in schools too much. Yeah. So a lot of people think that, you know, if you come in contact with a radioactive particle, that it will make you radioactive. Yeah. So they think that if a radioactive particle lands on my hand, that this will make the jacket radioactive, and also my skin and my tissue and everything. But actually that's not true, at least not for alpha, beta and gamma radiation. Okay, so as you can see, I just touched my arm with the radioactive watch and nothing happened. So it doesn't make me radioactive. So basically alpha, beta and gamma radiation can't do that. Now, is there a radiation that can make you radioactive? Yes, for example, there's something called neutron radiation, and if you come in contact with this radiation, it has the ability to make you yourself radioactive. But that's only to find very close to the reactor. So only if you're standing, close to the reactor, like for example, in Chernobyl, they have used some excavators to get rid of the radioactive material. And those machines, they are now radioactive because they came in close contact with neutron radiation. And alpha, beta and gamma radiation actually cannot, make you radioactive. They just will destroy your cells because of ionizing radiation, but you yourself will not become radioactive. Now the real problem is ingestion and inhalation of radioactive particles. So if you eat a plant in your garden where there has been a radioactive particle falling onto the leaves of your salad, and if you ingest that, now then you have a real problem. Once it's in your body, it's really hard to get rid of it, and it will continue to radiate your body, and that's pretty bad. So ingestion is a problem, and also inhalation, and that's why people often wear dust masks when they are around Chernobyl and doing their work there. If there is a radioactive fallout cloud hovering over your region, then you need to protect yourself against the inhalation of radioactive particles, and also you need to protect your plants in the garden against radioactive particles. And that can only be done with a greenhouse made like this, or with a hoop house made with a plastic sheet. So you just want to prevent that a radioactive particle falls onto your plant or onto the earth where the plant is growing, because when the earth, is getting contaminated, the plant will take up a radioactive particle, so then it's inside of the plant, and then when you eat it, you can get radiation sickness as well. So, okay, I know this is a very long explanation, but it's a very important topic. If you want to make your greenhouse airtight, it's pretty easy. Like, I here have a greenhouse which has a lot of parts, and actually there are a lot of gaps in between the frame and the windows. And if I lift that off, I can, it's certainly possible that there will be a radioactive particle coming into my greenhouse, which I want to prevent. So I really want to get this as airtight as possible. And today I'm going to use silicone to silicone all of the gaps. And also today I want to make an experiment. Like today I want to prove to you that your vegetables are going to be safe from radiation, even if the particles are right on the roof or right at the side of the wall of your greenhouse. So a lot of people are afraid that they can't eat the vegetables anymore because maybe the tomato plant was touching the roof, and just outside with a distance of 7 millimeters there's a radioactive particle, and then they are afraid that they can't eat the vegetables anymore. But that's not true. And today I want to prove this to you. So now I'm going to take my radioactive watch and lay it outside of the greenhouse, and at the inside I'm going to place a tomato, and then we leave it there for about 30 minutes, and then we will measure the radioactivity of the tomato and see if it has gotten radioactive. So I have placed my radioactive watch outside of the greenhouse. As you can see, the radioactivity reaches to the inside of the greenhouse. And now I'm going to take a tomato, which is not radioactive at all, and I'm going to place it here, just beside the radioactive watch. And I'm just gonna leave that here for half an hour or 1 hour, and then we will measure again and see if the radioactive watch has made the tomato radioactive. And that's not going to be the case. I can tell you right now. But a lot of people won't believe this until they have seen it. So let's do this experiment. I only want to seal all of the walls and the roof, but I still want to leave the window operational. But you know, I want to do all of the long work, which needs most of the time now, because sealing off a small window doesn't take long, right? So some people might say, yeah, I just wait until the fallout situation happens, because probably it won't happen, so I'm too lazy to do this now. But actually you should do most of the work now, because then you probably won't have the time to seal off your greenhouse in time. Because as you know, as a civilian, you probably get informed when it's too late. So yeah, so now I want to seal off everything except of the windows, and I can seal them off very quickly with duct tape as well. So that's what I want to do with the windows. And the door is another situation. Actually, the door is not sealing off the greenhouse 100%, so I have some gaps here, but of course I cannot take some silicone and seal off the door, because then I could not enter my greenhouse anymore. So my solution for this problem is actually that I want to take some plastic sheeting, and when the situation comes, I will attach the plastic sheeting on the top of my greenhouse and come down and also cover my compost piles. And then I will create a second entry. All right, now I will take some transparent silicone and seal off my greenhouse. Okay, the tomato has been lying aside the radioactive forge for quite some time now. So now let's see if it has gotten radioactive. Yeah, as you can see, nothing is radioactive about this tomato here, and it can be eaten without getting radiation sickness. The radioactive watch here did not make my tomato radioactive. Okay guys, so this was a short information video about how you can protect your greenhouse against radioactive fallout. The answer is you need to make your greenhouse airtight. So you need to be able to shut off your greenhouse from the outside, and that's the solution, which is actually pretty easy. But it needs a little bit of time and work, and maybe you don't have the time when the fallout particles come onto your country. So it's best to prepare everything now, because you never know if something like this is going to happen again. Look at Fukushima. There are hundreds and hundreds of nuclear power plants on this planet, and they are all a big danger to us if uncontrolled. So if everything is in controlled situation, of course it's a safe technology, but as we have seen, we weren't able to control a meltdown, and now we are left with Fukushima and Chernobyl, which will, you know, be a long burden for us. Alright, so now I want to continue sealing off my greenhouse, making it airtight against radioactive particles. And besides that, I have to say it's not only this one reason why I'm doing this. The second reason is that I also want to keep in the heat a little bit better, and yeah, if you have a lot of gaps in your greenhouse, then you will lose a lot of heat, and that will counteract the principle of a greenhouse. So yeah, sealing off gaps is never a bad idea. Yeah, so that was my video for today. I hope that you maybe found it interesting or learned something from it. And if you have any other tips on this topic, I'm very open, so please leave a comment in the comment section below. And also, if you are interested in getting one of these Geiger counters, I can put a link into the description below where you can get this kind of Geiger counter. So yeah, I want to thank you for watching and stay tuned till next time.